Every custom vehicle I've ever had has always been my only vehicle and my daily driver, because if I'm not driving them, I'm not really enjoying them that much. And I don't feel like it's worth the effort to me if I'm just going to leave it parked sitting somewhere. My name's Cooley. I'm a Southeast Texas native, but I'm living here in South Florida for only one reason that I can think of. And I'm from Low Intentions Trucks and Customs that started in Australia, and we only have one U.S. chapter in Texas of about, I think, 10 to 11 people, and I think best club I've ever been in. Only club, but it's the best club. Well, as far as car related, just a regular kid, you know, little monster truck toys, and just about every little boy and some girls too had the Hot Wheels cars. But my custom vehicle influence didn't start until I was, I guess, in middle school. I actually remember the very first moment I was exposed to the custom truck world. We were used to getting hurricanes where I'm from, so when we would evacuate, I'd go to my grandma's house about 2 hours north, and I was wanting something to do when I was there, so I was at Walmart looking at magazines, and I pick up a trucking magazine. I see the truck on the cover. I'm like, what? I didn't understand what was happening to it, because it was on the ground, and I had never been exposed to any sort of air suspension or custom fabrication or anything like that. So I got it and was flipping through that. You know, over the course of a week, we were evacuated, I think. I can't remember the hurricane, and yeah, flipping through that, just slowly educating myself in the custom truck world. And so from there, it sort of sparked an interest. I wasn't hooked, but I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. It's interesting. Every little kid, you know, wants a big old jacked up monster truck, but hardly any kids want the little, you know, mini trucks or ones that sit on the ground. I started seeing other custom trucks in my neighborhood from guys that were 4 or 5 years older than me. And one of them is actually in our truck club now in my Texas area. And I would see those and just be blown away, like, how does he drive it? You know, typical questions from unexperienced truck people, you know? Yeah, how do you get over speed bumps and all that nonsense? So that totally changed my route of the first vehicle I wanted. First vehicle I wanted was a 2-wheel drive, standard cab, GMC or Chevy, full size. And it ended up being a 95 single cab step side was my first truck, and slowly started chipping away at the custom stuff on that one. I saved my money, and I was so excited to buy the APC Euro tail lights at AutoZone. I could not wait to get them. I was like, I gotta have those. So that was one of the first things I did. And then I think I put like a leveling shackle on it, and it had 15 by 10s on it, you know, just basically the cookie cutter first custom truck design, you know, wide 15s, leveled out, just cleaned up. It wasn't until I graduated high school and I started getting paid more on a full-time job before I started really chipping away at it. I think I ended up getting it bagged I got my first set of 20s from a now club member in our club. It's the first guy I ever bought my 20-inch wheels from, and he was like the 4th owner of these wheels. They were like centerline Archers, 20 by 8s. They had been repaired like 5 or 6 times, like big old aluminum welds on them because they were all cracked and everything. But they sold them to me for a good deal. So I got those and rolled on those for, it had to be like 3 or 4 years. I bought it in 2001 out of high school and ended up having it until, gosh, I don't know, it might have been 2010 when I sold it. So yeah, I got it bagged at Extensive in 05 and slowly just started adding things to it. You know, I was working at a body shop doing paint work and all that. So I knew I was gonna paint it, but I wanted to shave this and that, you know, fill in this seam and all this stuff. And I got an Escalade front end for it because that's just what you did in the 2000s. You put Escalade front ends on. And I bought billet parts and ended up putting, I shaved the door handles but we had some rigged up door handle popper kit. So I had masking tape over my door handle holes for probably a year trying to figure out the popper situation before they were actually welded up. So once all that was said and done, I did the two-tone paint job. And I did just about everything in that except for a full-blown interior. And that was pretty much my wildest truck besides this one. My two trucks after that were a 2008 Silverado. I bought it brand new. Always wanted to buy a new truck and bag it. So I did that and painted it lime green, put some 24s on it, later got some 26-inch intros, and put a two-tone paint job on that and just drove that one for the longest time. Then I got an itch to do a new truck because everybody was doing the 08 to 2013 trucks is what those body styles were. And so I got the 2011 Dodge single cab. Did the same thing I did to the Chevy. I bagged it, and put the big billets on it, and put a paint job on it. And I did the interior in that one. I wanted a nice leather interior. And yeah, just went from there. Everybody seemed to like that one, and that one's actually in Queens, New York right now. A friend of mine, Lenny. Well, I could talk for hours about the truck, but to basically sum it up, it was my grandfather's truck, and he bought it brand new in 1992. I was born in '86. I was probably 6 years old at the time, and he used it for everything. You know, they're big hunters, and he'd go on the deer lease and haul corn and tools and all that stuff, and fixing up the deer lease, and he'd come to our baseball games in it, and we'd go on trips in this truck, and I learned to drive in this very truck here. And yeah, so, and it was my grandfather's truck for years and years and years. And actually, when I was doing the interior in the Dodge, he ended up giving it to me because I needed another vehicle to drive. Because every custom vehicle I've ever had has always been my only vehicle and my daily driver, because if I'm not driving them, I'm not really enjoying them that much. And I don't feel like it's worth the effort to me if I'm just going to leave it parked sitting somewhere. The whole reason I started the truck was I was thinking 2015, I think. I was living in Austin, and I had a failed relationship, so I moved back to my hometown in Texas, and I was like, well, let me just spend some time with friends and family here and see where things go. And I was planning on doing another Dodge, like a crew cab. I'm like, well, I've already been there. And I got to thinking about it. It was like, well, while my grandparents are still around and healthy, I think I'd like to fix that truck up so they can see it finished and everything. I was like, well, let me just start doing that. It's like, I'll probably like put a paint job on it and just like a drop and wheels and tires and things like that, and just drive it. Of course, we all know how that goes. You do one thing and then it snowballs into the other. It's like, well, I know I'm not going to be happy with just a drop. Let me just bag it. I'm like, well, I know I'm not going to be happy with just bags. Let me go ahead and body drop it. And so it got out of control there. And then I decided to motor swap it and shave the firewall and all that stuff. And a friend of mine I was living with at the time, he did all the fabrication work on it. He basically built a frame for it in pretty much a one-car garage and at the house we were living at. And so once all that was done, that's when you saw it at Tex-Mex. It was still the pawpaw truck form on the outside, still had the skin, and but I had the fully detailed engine bay and the motor and everything, and I wanted to drive it like that for a little while. Unfortunately, my grandfather didn't make it. He died before we could get the truck back together, running and driving, but my grandma got to see it. And I think those two were always my biggest supporters for the truck. And as long as she got to see it, I was satisfied with that part of it. They're Gene and Mary Cooley, and they've always told me since I was a kid that the GMC stood for Gene and Mary Cooley. So as I was building the truck, I didn't have a road trip in mind. It was just going to be a nice detailed build to eventually sit in a garage somewhere I drive on nice days. So nobody building a vehicle for a road trip is going to shave the firewall and paint the engine bay and paint the motor and all that stuff. And I don't regret it, but I probably wouldn't have done it if I would have known how much I was going to drive this truck. So as the truck was nearing completion, I was planning on moving anyway. I was thinking about going to the Austin area because I like that area. When I lived there a couple of years before that, I was going to give it another try. I was like, well, there's always some places I wanted to go see, and I had money saved. I was like, well, I'm just going to go. And then I decided, I was like, well, I guess I could take this truck if I wanted to. It's got a relatively new motor and everything's new on it. I've been driving it a while, haven't been giving me any issues. So I just said, all right, I'm just gonna take this truck on a road trip and see how long it lasts and how long I feel like staying out there. And that's what I did. Once the truck was finished, hit the road in it and just kept going. Did the LS motor swap and I spent so much money on the truck, I didn't feel like dropping money on a Dakota digital gauge cluster and all that. So I was like, well, I got a GPS that tells my speed limit or tells me the speed I'm going.
We all do it.
The gas gauge works and the voltage gauge works, so I can make do with that. And I have like the little OBD2 sensor. I can pull up things on my phone to see how it's really doing if something's going wrong. So I just did that. But I didn't have an odometer, so I don't know how many miles I actually drove. But I estimated around 26,000, because every now and then I would add it up on my phone. I was like, okay, I went here and here and here, and just sort of added up like that. The trip ended up being about 3.5 months. Yeah, and I wasn't ready for it to end whenever it ended. I could have stayed out there another 3 months. I'm pretty sure some of the states were a blur because there's not a lot to see in certain states. Like, not a lot to see in Nebraska or, sorry to any Nebraska residents, but
you're gonna get some hate on you.
Yeah, some Nebraska haters. But I'm pretty sure I went through all 48. I didn't have stops in every state, but I pretty much wanted to see all the national parks. So if your state had a national park, I stopped there. Well, as far as memorable locations, my favorite national park was Glacier in Montana. And that was spectacular. It was like going through a postcard. Like everywhere you turn is just gorgeous. It was actually one of the Forrest Gump running spots was in Glacier. My trip wasn't modeled after Forrest Gump, but it definitely resembled everything that he did when he was running. I'm a big movie fan, and Forrest Gump is my favorite movie. And I wanted to go see all of the running spots because, I mean, they weren't just any ordinary spots. He ran in some pretty spectacular locations. And Monument Valley in Arizona and Glacier National Park was one of the places, and the lighthouse up in Maine. Yeah, I wanted to see all that. And so I went and saw it. Besides locations, one of my most memorable things was the people I met on the trip. Basically just random mini truckers opening up their home to me. Like I show up at their door and it's like, hi, my name is such and such. And it's like, okay, here's a bed to sleep in now. And you want some food? You hungry? Here's a shower, there's towels over there. Just complete strangers just opening up their home and just taking care of me like one of their family. As far as issues on the trip, and that's the main thing that mini truckers are concerned about driving their trucks is, are they gonna make it? Took all that with a grain of salt, and I said, whatever happens, happens. I mean, hopefully I'm not gonna die, but I'm sure I'm not gonna die on this trip. If something happens, I'll call a tow truck or I'll walk to the nearest town and call a tow truck. My AAA was the hand tools in the truck. I had a floor jack in the truck. I had 2 spare bags, a roll of airline, and decent amount of know-how. But what gave me the confidence in the truck was I had driven it beforehand, before I got out on the road in it. And it was solid. The motor felt solid, there's no issues with it. And I was like, okay, let's go. I had ended up having my AC compressor go out. It went out in Utah, I think. And then somewhere down the road later, we were in California, and I thought the AC was gonna go out again because it stopped blowing cold as we were going into Death Valley. We're driving into Death Valley and the AC stops blowing cold. And that's like the worst place your AC could go out. But luckily it was just a quick fix and I got it fixed. Ended up having to replace compressors for the first time since the original compressors. I did that back in Colorado. Yeah, I ended up changing a set of tires. My white walls are on top of a tire dump somewhere in Tacoma, Washington. Someone might have got a set of white walls out of Washington somewhere, but they're there. Bought a set of tires at Walmart for 88 bucks a piece and put them on there in Washington, just kept going. I had my exhaust that came loose at one point, and it was rattling on the frame, and I brought it into an exhaust shop to get it repaired. And luckily I did, because one of my lower control arm bolts was almost completely out of the control arm mount. And if I didn't go into that exhaust shop to get my exhaust looked at, who knows what would have happened. Somebody was watching over me. I don't know who it was, but I'm glad they were. But I never had a problem with the truck that left me stranded on the side of the road. Nothing like that at all. I would do it all over again tomorrow if I could. One of the people I ended up meeting on my trip was my girlfriend. I met her in North Carolina. She's from Jersey and I'm from Texas, and we met in North Carolina. Go figure that. And now I ended up in Florida with her. Never expected that, but no regrets so far. You never know what life's gonna bring your way. Later on, I might get an itch to, do another trip in the truck just for nostalgia purposes. When I redo the truck, who knows, I might hit the road in it again, we'll see. I definitely thank all the people that open up their homes to me, for sure. Definitely thank all my friends, Shane and Brian Hanners and Tony Wynn and all those guys that gave me help on the truck, because I don't know how to do most of the stuff on the truck that was done. I mean, I just make them pretty. Once all the hard stuff is done, when it's time to make it pretty, that's where I step in. Jesse James always called them cake decorators, and I am definitely a cake decorator.
Cake decorators like, in the automotive world.
You bake the cake and I'll decorate it for you. I can't explain it. It's a urge you can't really fight to, I don't know, just to create something other than what other people have. I guess it's the need to stand out. I'm never really been someone that's always strived to be in the spotlight, but I've always wanted my truck to stand out. I don't know. You have to ask a psychologist on that, but maybe there's
they go to a car show.
Yeah, maybe there's some other deep-seated issues going on with mini truckers, but that's the way I see it anyway. Hopefully you guys liked hearing about my story, and if you want to hear more, like and subscribe to BuiltToCruise, and yeah, thanks. And action. Slowly creep up with my hands, just like Ricky Bobby. If you don't chew Big Red, then
right.
Cut for editing. Cut for editing.
Right.
Sir, why are you doing this? I just felt like running.
I didn't have AAA, no. Girlfriend's shaking her head right now, like, you idiot, you need to have AAA.
Yeah, that's
You now have
now have
AAA.
Still don't have AAA.
I have it. Okay.